Maddox Kerr never took the subway until tonight. The boardroom lights had dimmed hours ago, the final deal signed, and his private driver had waited outside. But something in him, a strange restless pull, made him wave the car off and head down the concrete stairs into the city's underbelly. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe he wanted to feel something real for once. Billion-dollar mergers didn't exactly come with soul. The train screeched into the station and Maddox stepped inside the nearly empty car. It was close to midnight. Only a few people slouched on the benches, half asleep or lost in their headphones. A woman sat near the back, her head resting against the window. Her soft breathing fogged the glass. She looked peaceful, out cold in a way only the truly exhausted could manage. She wore a threadbare denim jacket over a faded yellow dress, a tote bag half spilled at her feet. A sketchbook poked from the side. Her dark curls framed her face and one hand clutched a mechanical pencil like it was precious. He didn't mean to sit down beside her, but he did. Maybe it was the quiet calm about her. Maybe it was her vulnerability. Maybe it was how utterly out of place she looked in a world he understood too well. The train lurched, and her head dropped onto his shoulder. He froze. She stirred, her lashes fluttering once, but didn't wake. Her cheek stayed pressed against his arm like she belonged there. And for a ridiculous second, he didn't move either. The next stop came. Then the next. And still, she stayed asleep, warm against him like a stranger who wasn't meant to feel familiar. "Is this your stop?" he asked quietly, when the train neared the edge of Manhattan. She stirred again. Her brown eyes opened slowly, confused, then wide with embarrassment. "Oh my God," she said, bolting upright. "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," he said, holding up his hands. "Really? You were out cold." She groaned and rubbed her eyes. "I do this all the time. I work late and then I crash on the train. It's pathetic." "Looks like you needed the rest," he said, studying her face. There were paint smudges on her fingertips, a faded scar near her temple, and something fierce behind the tiredness. She didn't look fragile, just worn out. She blinked at him, then smiled weakly. "Thanks for not robbing me in my sleep." "I left your sketchbook untouched too," he said with a grin. That got a laugh out of her. "Wow. A true gentleman." The train screeched again, and she stood up, clutching her bag like she was late for something. "This is my stop." He stood too, without thinking. "Mine, too." She looked at him, skeptical. "Really? I'm full of surprises." He followed her out onto the platform into the cool night air above. She hugged her arms around herself, then glanced at him sideways. "I'm Fiona Summers," she said. "Maddox," he replied. She waited. "Do you have a last name, Maddox?" He hesitated, then said Kerr. She nodded, not recognizing it. That was refreshing. "Well, thanks for not letting me drool on your suit." He looked down. His shirt was a little wrinkled, but no drool. "Close call." She smiled again, brighter this time. "Night, Maddox Kerr." "Night, Fiona Summers." She turned and walked off toward a row of old brownstones. He watched her go, the yellow dress swaying around her knees, her bag bouncing against her hip. Something inside him twisted. He didn't even know her. But something about her sleep-heavy trust, her paint-stained hands, the way she apologized like she'd been burned by the world too many times, stuck in his chest. He didn't expect to see her again. But 3 nights later, he found himself on the same train at the same time. And there she was again, this time awake, sketching furiously on her lap. She looked up and blinked. "You again." He sat across from her. Couldn't stay away. She raised an eyebrow. "You stalking me, subway guy?" "I might be," he said. "Or maybe I just like late-night public transportation now." She tilted her head. "Weird hobby." He leaned back, watching her draw. "What are you sketching?" "You." He blinked. "Seriously?" She grinned. "You've got a good face. Sharp lines. Very tortured billionaire energy." His mouth went dry. "Is that a compliment?" "You tell me, subway guy." He chuckled. "You really think I look like a billionaire?" She shrugged. "You're too clean for this train. The suit, the watch, the attitude. But maybe you just work at a bank." "Maybe." She paused, then looked him right in the eye. "Or maybe you're hiding something." He didn't reply. She smirked no, smiled, and went back to sketching. Mysterious. I like it. The next week, it became a pattern. They met on the train. Always late. Always in the same car. Sometimes she napped, sometimes they talked. She told him about her art school dreams, her 2 jobs, the gallery that turned her down. He told her half-truths, grew up in New York, worked in finance, long days, late nights. He didn't tell her about the penthouse in Tribeca, or the Forbes feature, or the billion-dollar company he built from the ground up. With her, he didn't want to be that Maddox. He just wanted to be the guy she fell asleep next to. One night, she was quiet, her eyes red, her fingers trembling. "What happened?" he said. "I got fired," she said softly. "From the cafe. I was 5 minutes late. Again." He leaned forward. "Where was your second job?" "Art supply store. They cut hours." He hesitated. "Let me help you." She looked up, startled. "What?" "I have connections. I could—" "No," she said quickly. "No charity. I'm not a project. I didn't mean it like that." "I know," she said softer. "But I have to figure it out. I've always figured it out." He nodded slowly. "Okay." The train rolled on. "You're different," she said after a long moment. "Most guys would have tried to fix me by now." "I think you're already strong," he said. "You don't need fixing." She looked out the window. "Why are you really on this train, Maddox?" "I don't know," he said. "But I think it's you." She turned to him, startled. "I think I was supposed to meet you here," he said, voice low. "And I think I don't want to stop." She didn't speak. But her hand found his under the flickering fluorescent light. And she didn't let go. Fiona didn't show up the next night. Or the night after that. Maddox stayed on the train longer than usual, switching cars, scanning faces, pretending he wasn't doing exactly what he was doing, looking for her. The seat by the window where she always sat stayed empty, like it was waiting too. By the third night of silence, he did something he hadn't done since he was 20. He asked a stranger for help. The barista at the cafe 2 blocks down from the station glanced up from the espresso machine, clearly unimpressed by his tailored jacket and polished shoes. "Fiona," she said, chewing gum. "She doesn't work here anymore." "I know. I was hoping you might know where she went." The girl narrowed her eyes. "Are you a landlord or something?" "No," Maddox said, then paused. "Just someone who misses her." That softened her slightly. She mentioned trying to get into the downtown art co-op. They do open submissions on Fridays. That was all he needed. Friday night, Maddox walked into the warehouse turned studio space in Soho, out of place among the paint-splattered concrete and string lights. An old jazz record played from a dusty speaker. Artists wandered between canvases and installations, sipping from plastic cups and talking in clusters. Then he saw her. Fiona stood alone by the far wall, arms crossed, staring at a piece that wasn't hers. Her curls were pinned up this time, exposing her neck. She wore a black jumpsuit with a tear near the sleeve seam. There was no tote bag, no sketchbook, just her, quiet and still. He stepped up beside her. "You disappeared," he said. She didn't look at him. "I didn't know if you'd notice." "I noticed." She gave a small nod, still not turning. "I got tired of waiting for things to change. Figured I had to make something happen, even if it's small." "Is this your work?" he asked, motioning to the canvas in front of them. "No. Mine didn't get accepted." She finally glanced at him. "But I came anyway. Needed to remind myself what I'm aiming for." He searched her face. "You should have told me. I didn't want to ask for anything I hadn't earned." Maddox exhaled slowly. "You don't have to earn my attention, Fiona." She looked away, her jaw tense. "That's easy to say when you're whatever it is you are." He hesitated. "I'm not who you think." "Then who are you?" "I was going to tell you. I just wanted more time." Her eyes met his, sharp now, guarded. "More time for what?" "To keep pretending you're just some guy on the subway." He didn't answer right away. "I didn't lie," he said. "I just didn't want the truth to ruin it." Fiona crossed her arms tighter. "You think knowing who you were would have changed how I saw you?" "Yes," he said simply. She blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. I didn't want you to see the suits, the penthouse, the boardrooms. I wanted you to see me. I did, she said. Before you decided I wasn't allowed to see all of you. Silence stretched between them until a voice interrupted. Maddox? A woman in heels and red lipstick approached, holding a flute of champagne and looking amused. I didn't expect to see you here. This isn't exactly your crowd. Maddox's jaw tightened. I'm here with someone. Oh. She looked at Fiona, intrigued. You're slumming it tonight, I see. Fiona stepped back. I should go. No, Maddox said quickly. Don't. But she was already walking through the crowd, pushing past the clusters of artists and canvases, out into the cold. He followed. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at her sleeves. She stopped at the corner, arms wrapped around herself, not turning when he caught up. I'm sorry, he said, his voice quieter now. That woman, she's part of an old life. I haven't spoken to her in years. Fiona stared at the streetlight. She knew you, the real you. So do you, he said. You know me better than anyone has in years. She turned then, slowly. You're a billionaire, aren't you? He didn't flinch. Yes. She let out a breath, not quite a laugh. Of course you are. I didn't plan for this, he said. I didn't plan for you. Why were you on that subway? I needed something real, he said. And then you fell asleep on my shoulder, and I couldn't look away. Fiona shook her head. You could have told me. I would have hated it, but at least it would have been your truth. I was afraid you'd walk away. And I still might, she said, but her voice had lost some of its fire. They stood in silence under the flickering street lamp. I want to show you something, Maddox said. Please. She hesitated, then nodded once. One thing. He led her down the block to a waiting car. It wasn't his usual sleek black Bentley, just a rented sedan he'd used to blend in. He opened the door for her and didn't speak as they drove. 20 minutes later, they stopped in front of a converted glass and steel building in Brooklyn. Not his penthouse. Not his office. Inside was a space flooded with light canvases leaned against the walls, sketches pinned on corkboards, jars of brushes lined up in perfect rows. It was pristine, untouched. This was going to be a new gallery, he said. But I never opened it. Couldn't find the right curator. Didn't find anyone who made me believe in the work. Fiona walked inside. Slowly. Her fingers grazed a blank canvas. He followed her in. It's yours now. She turned sharply. Excuse me? I'm giving it to you. To run, to fill, to create something that's yours. Her eyes searched his, stunned. You can't just give people buildings. I can, he said. But I'm not doing it for charity. I'm doing it because I believe in you. She stared at him, breathing uneven. You barely know me. I know enough. He stepped closer, his voice lower. And I want to know everything else. Not because I'm trying to fix you. Because I want to build something with you. Fiona turned away, hands trembling as they touched the nearest easel. You really think I could belong in a place like this? I think places like this are waiting for people like you. She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. And when she turned back, there was something new in her eyes. Something that hadn't been there before. Trust. The first time Fiona painted in the gallery, she didn't say a word to Maddox. She arrived early before the sun had risen fully over the East River and stepped into the space on her own, using the key he'd left her without fanfare. No grand speeches. No expectations. Just a promise sealed in silence. By the time Maddox arrived with 2 coffees and a paper bag of almond croissants, she'd already filled the far wall with charcoal strokes, raw, impulsive movements that felt more like emotion than technique. You didn't waste any time, he said quietly, setting the cups down on a work table. I didn't want to think too hard, she replied, wiping her hands on her thigh. Thinking ruins it sometimes. He watched her for a moment. You always paint this fast? No, she said, still facing the canvas. But I haven't had space like this in years. I didn't know how badly I needed it until I walked in. He nodded and set the bag near her elbow. Eat something. She glanced at him, then the croissants. You're really committing to the whole supportive patron thing, huh? I'm hoping you'll let me be more than that. She didn't answer right away, but after a beat, she reached for a croissant and took a bite. The following days blurred into a rhythm neither of them questioned. She painted, he watched. Sometimes they worked in silence. Other times they argued about color theory, gallery lighting, or whether or not the exposed brick was too obvious. But beneath it all, something unspoken shifted. One afternoon, as Fiona adjusted a canvas near the back of the room, she said, I got a call this morning. From the co-op gallery. They reconsidered my submission. Maddox looked up from his phone, surprised. That's great. I turned them down. He blinked. Why? I already have a place to show my work. She didn't look at him. And I'm not interested in being someone's charity case. You think that's what this is? I thought it might be. At first. She stepped back from the canvas, arms crossed. But you haven't tried to control anything. You didn't even ask to see what I was working on until today. Because I wanted you to trust that it was yours. She nodded slowly. And I do. I think I do. A silence lingered between them, different from the ones that had come before, not distant, but charged. Then she said, I want to meet the rest of your life. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You've seen mine. The trains. The late nights. The sketchbooks and the rejection letters. But I haven't seen yours. Not really. Maddox leaned on the edge of the table. Are you sure? If this is going to be real, and I think it might be, I need to understand all of you. He nodded once. Then be ready tonight. That evening, Fiona stood in front of a building she never could have imagined entering. It wasn't just tall, it was impossible. All glass and steel, shining like a blade against the sky. Maddox's world wasn't just affluent. It was untouchable. The doorman recognized her name and let her through without hesitation. When the elevator opened directly into the penthouse, her breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, casting golden light on sleek furniture and curated art. A piano stood near the far wall, untouched. Everything was meticulous, designed, deliberate. Not a single hint of mess. You live here? She asked, stepping inside. I do. She turned slowly in place, taking it in. It looks like a hotel lobby and a spaceship had a baby. That bad? No, she said. Just sterile. He walked past her, loosening his collar. It wasn't always. It used to feel like home. Lately, it's just been a place I sleep. She followed him to the kitchen, where 2 wine glasses sat beside a bottle already breathing. How long have you lived here? 7 years. And you've never let anyone in? Not like this. She leaned against the counter, studying him. There's something I haven't told you, he said. She straightened. Okay. He took a breath, then met her eyes. When I was 17, my mother vanished. Fiona's expression shifted. Vanished? She left one afternoon and never came back. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. She moved closer instinctively. Did they find her? No. No foul play. No sightings. No closure. His voice was quiet now. For years I told myself she was alive somewhere, starting over. But the truth is I don't know. I never will. Fiona reached out, her fingers brushing his. That's why you built all this. He nodded once. Control. Power. Safety. If I had enough of all three, maybe nothing else would disappear. She didn't speak, just held his hand tighter. That's why I didn't tell you who I was, he added. Because all of this, it's armor. And you made me want to take it off. They stood in silence, hands entwined. Then Fiona said, I want to stay tonight. His eyes lifted to hers. Not for anything dramatic, she added. I just want to fall asleep somewhere that doesn't have rusted pipes or neighbors yelling through the walls. He led her to the guest room, where crisp linens and soft lighting waited. She turned at the door. You don't have to leave me alone, you know? He hesitated. Are you sure? She nodded. Yeah. I think I want to wake up next to the man I met on the subway. Not the billionaire. Just you. Later, as the city hummed below and she lay curled beside him, Fiona whispered, "Thank you for not waking me that first night." Maddox kissed the top of her head, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for falling asleep." The city looked different from the rooftop of Maddox's building, less like a battlefield, more like a promise. The gallery's debut loomed just days away, but Fiona wasn't thinking about the opening. Not about the press list or the catering or even the last-minute installation she'd arranged that morning. She stood at the edge of the roof in a long navy coat, her arms folded tight against the breeze, staring out as if the skyline might answer the question she hadn't dared ask. Maddox stepped out behind her, holding 2 crystal tumblers. He offered her one without a word. She took it and sipped, the bourbon warm against the chill. "You've been quiet all night," he said, leaning on the railing beside her. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Why now?" She looked over at him. "Because this feels too good. And when things feel too good, they usually are." "I don't do temporary," he said. "You do control. You do distance. You do disappearing behind glass and steel." "Not with you." Fiona turned back to the skyline. "That night on the train, I was so broke I had to choose between dinner and bus fare. I chose the train because it was warm and free. I was embarrassed to be asleep in front of strangers. But I didn't care enough to stop it. I'd been trying to hold everything together for so long, her voice cracked softly, "let go for 1 second. And I was lucky enough to be there when you did," he said. A beat passed. She glanced sideways. "You're really not going to run, are you?" "No," he said. "Not even if you tell me every insecurity you've got." "I've got a lot." "So do I." She looked back at the city, then down at the glass in her hand. "Maddox? Yeah? If this gallery works and people start paying attention, I'm going to be seen. Not just as a new artist, but as the woman you're with." "I know. They'll tear me apart." "Then let them try," he said. "I've got more influence than most of them have opinions. And I'm not afraid to use every ounce of it." She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Do you ever get tired of being that sure about everything?" "I'm only sure about 2 things. He turned to face her. "You. And us." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "I don't want to be a story someone tells about how you dated a struggling artist for your street cred. Then let's make it a story about how I fell in love with the strongest woman I've ever met." Her mouth opened, but no words came. He set his glass down, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out a small, unassuming box. Her breath caught. "Maddox, I'm not doing this the traditional way. No velvet restaurant booths. No string quartet. Just you and me and the city that brought us together." He opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant. A single oval diamond set on a thin platinum band. No flash, no drama, just intention. Fiona's voice was barely above a whisper. "Are you serious? I've never been more." She stared at the ring, then up at him. "But we haven't even—" "Fiona," he said, stepping closer. "I've built empires without second-guessing a single move, but I second-guessed myself every night for years until you fell asleep on my shoulder. I want to build a life with you. No more waiting. No more wondering." She looked down at the ring again, her eyes glassy. "I didn't think you were capable of surprising me anymore," she said. "I've got a few tricks left." She took a long breath, then extended her hand. "Then put it on before I change my mind." He slid the ring onto her finger. Fit perfectly. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Fiona laughed full-bodied, unguarded. "Oh my God, I'm engaged to a billionaire. You make it sound like a bad decision." She grabbed his collar and kissed him, hard and fast. When they pulled apart, she said, "It probably is, but you're mine now. Which means I get to drag you to art fairs and force you to eat vegan pastries. I'll survive." "I doubt it." They stayed on the rooftop until the stars came out, talking about everything they hadn't dared say before: her childhood in a basement apartment with paint on the walls, his years of pretending to be fine while building a legacy that left him empty, the way they both never expected to find someone who saw through the mess and wanted all of it. 3 days later, the gallery opened. It was packed. Collectors, critics, and friends wandered through the space, sipping champagne and murmuring appreciatively. Half the pieces had red dots beside them by the end of the night. Fiona stood in the center, dressed in black satin and silver heels, her curls pinned in a loose twist, her expression unreadable. Maddox approached her from behind and wrapped an arm around her waist. "They love you," he said into her ear. "I think I love me," she replied. "You should." "I do." She turned to face him. "You know, I used to think happy endings were for people with simpler lives. They're for people who fight for them. And fall asleep on strangers on public transportation? Especially those people." She leaned in and whispered, "I'm ready now." "For what?" "For everything." He pressed his forehead to hers, the sound of the crowd fading behind them. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Neither am I." And as the cameras flashed behind them and the paintings glowed under gallery lights, Fiona kissed the man who had once been just a stranger on a late-night train. No more hiding. No more fear. Just two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected place and refused to let go. Fiona stood in front of the mirror in Maddox's penthouse, her fingers trembling slightly as she fastened a small silver clasp behind her ear. Her reflection didn't look like the girl who used to sketch strangers on the subway with charcoal-stained hands and worry beneath her eyes. Tonight, she looked like someone who had survived the storm, who had built something from the wreckage. Behind her, Maddox entered the room without a sound, holding a velvet case in one hand. "Are you going to keep pretending you're not nervous?" he asked, setting the box on the dresser beside her. She met his gaze in the mirror. "I'm not nervous. You're twisting your ring again." She glanced down at her hand and forced herself to still. "Fine. Maybe a little. You've already won. The gallery was only the beginning." "I know," she said, her voice softer now. "But this is different. Speaking in front of people at the foundation launch of all things, what if I mess it up?" "You won't," he said, "because you're not pretending to be anyone. That's why they listen." He opened the velvet case, revealing a thin necklace with a single teardrop pearl. "I had it made," he said. "Pearls are formed from irritation. Thought it suited you." "You're saying I'm irritating?" "I'm saying you turn pressure into beauty." She turned from the mirror and let him fasten the clasp behind her neck. "I used to think I had to make noise to be seen," she whispered. "You don't," he said. "You walk into a room and the air shifts." Later that evening, the ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers and candlelight. Guests in tailored suits and floor-length gowns drifted beneath soft jazz, flutes of champagne balanced effortlessly in hand. But all eyes turned when Fiona stepped to the podium. Maddox watched from the side, arms crossed, his expression unreadable until she glanced at him. Then it softened. She cleared her throat. "6 months ago," she began, "I was sleeping on the train because I couldn't afford a taxi after a night shift. Tonight, I'm standing here launching a foundation that funds emerging artists who just need space. Not opportunity handed to them, just a chance." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. "I've been told more than once that I was too late, too raw, too unpredictable," she continued. "But I wasn't any of those things. I was just unseen. And now, I see myself. I see what I'm capable of. And I want others to see it too in themselves." Applause broke out as she stepped down. Maddox met her halfway, took her hand, and led her to the far end of the ballroom, where the lights were dimmer and the music gentler. "You destroyed that speech," he said. "I didn't trip over any words." "You didn't have to," he said. "You said them with conviction." She leaned into him as they began to dance. "It still feels like I'm watching someone else's life sometimes." "It's yours now," he replied. "I just get to witness it." She glanced up at him. "You never told me what happened with the board." He spun her gently, then pulled her close again. "I stepped down." "What?" "They wanted me to shelve the foundation. Said it was too personal, not strategic. So I resigned." She searched his face. "You gave up your company?" "I didn't give it up. I gave it to people who care more about profits than purpose. I have other things to build now." "You're serious." "I've never been more," he said. I spent years creating something I thought would make me feel whole. Turns out that feeling came from a girl who once told me I had tortured billionaire energy. She laughed, then rested her head on his chest. You're going to get bored. I'm already more alive than I was with 100 board meetings. They danced until the music slowed, until the crowd thinned, until the stars outside the windows began to blink against the skyline. 3 months later, Maddox stood barefoot in the kitchen of a brownstone in Brooklyn, stirring coffee while Fiona painted barefoot on the floor. The penthouse had been sold quietly, the proceeds funneled into the foundation. They kept the gallery, of course. But home was here now, a sun-drenched space filled with mismatched furniture, canvases in progress, and the scent of jasmine tea. Did you see the email from the museum? She asked, not looking up from her brush. They want to feature your work, right? They want to commission it for their permanent collection. He set the mug down and crouched beside her. You're not surprised, she said. I'm proud. She dipped her brush in gold. You know, you could have married anyone. Someone with less chaos, fewer paint stains. He reached out and wiped a bit of color from her cheek. I didn't want easier. I wanted you. Even when I'm impossible? Especially then. She leaned over and kissed him, her palm warm against his neck. That night, they lay tangled in a bed that still smelled faintly of new sheets and fresh paint. Rain tapped the windows, soft and steady. Fiona traced lazy circles on Maddox's chest, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you think it'll last? She asked. He turned to face her. What? This. Us. Everything we built. He took her hand and pressed it to his heart. Nothing about us was accidental. You didn't fall into my life, you woke me up in it. And I'll spend every day making sure you never regret it. She kissed him again, slower this time, and when they finally fell asleep, it was without any ghosts or doubts. Just the rhythm of their breathing and the quiet promise of tomorrow. In the morning, sunlight spilled across the floor, catching on a canvas still wet with color and a wedding band resting on the nightstand beside a sketchbook filled with drawings of a man who had once been a stranger on a train and who had become the love of her life.